Good morning. This is Bhuku ReBenzi Unplugged. This is following my conversation earlier with Khama Masimba, who says he's launching his book in 2 weeks. So I thought as a community we can also look at this whole experience and put it in context of what is happening in Zimbabwe. Is Khama Masimba sick? Is Zimbabwe in crisis? This is for you to answer. Who is the best doctor to look at Zimbabwe? If Zimbabwe was Khama Masimba, can we conclusively say that our opinions based on what we think we know is the correct one? Well, let's look at Gono, who was recently in an interview with Trevor Mule, and this is what he had to say. There's no need to deny them were self-evident. This is again as a backdrop of President Mnangagwa in his capacity as the President of the Republic, who has on several occasions taken offense with people that say there's a crisis in the country that requires outside intervention. According to President Mnangagwa, there is no crisis except the crisis that is being brewed or manufactured or invented by people who want regime change. Gono also said the day you are going to create a nation run on statutory instruments, know that there's something very wrong. And this was characteristic of the time he was governor. There were a lot of statutory instruments that were issued. Khama has also weighed in on the crisis debate, as many may know. What is your take on this? I'm joined by Mr. Elvis Mugari. Good morning. How are you this?
I'm okay.
Hello.
Mr. Mawera, how are you?
Not too bad. This is a Bhuku ReBenzi. Who is the Benzi? Who is insane? Is Zimbabwe sick? We now have two opinions. One, the former governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, Mr. Gideon Gono, and the other by former president of Botswana. The first thing that we have to deal with is this issue. Why are we using Khama Masimba's page? Shouldn't we just use pages of the 1873 FM radio or my page for that matter? Is it because of numbers or because of what? You have spoken to Khama Masimba. How best would you respond to this question that may be resident in people who come on Khama Masimba looking for him, only to find that there are people who are not him? How would you respond to that?
No, I think here we need to understand one thing, that I have spoken to Khama Masimba. And actually, Khama Masimba came in to say, no, I've been writing a book. And this is the project I have. I want to launch the book. The book is talking about mental health, issues of mental health. The book is also talking about, the Zimbabwean political issues, as well as his personal life experience. So he approached us as a community, he approached the community, the C2C, he approached the C2C community. And us me personally being a member of the C2C community, we said, no, I think it is very important to focus on building communities, so that after building community, whatever you are doing in the community or within the community is amplified, and hence it will signify, the success for the project you are intended to do, or the book you are intended to launch, with the help of the C2C as a community. So now we are coming to him and addressing his audience that this is what is happening. This is what Mkoma Masimba is doing. Because imagine, Mkoma Masimba might have the following from his page. He has the followers. And even more, they might be many followers. Remember, I was his follower. But I didn't know that Mkoma Masimba was intended or was in the process of launching his book. I only get to know after he engaged, openly engaged. So there are some people who are Mkoma Masimba's followers who are on his page, who doesn't know that Mkoma Masimba is in the process of launching, or he has been writing a book and trying to explain or to tell people or to document his personal experience as well as the issues of mental health and Pan-Africanism and other political issues. So it is important that we are coming to him so that the people also who are following him, who understand what is happening to Mkoma Masimba, and also what is he doing, and the importance and the criticality of the project he is working on. Number one, to his personal life. Number two, to his followers. And number three, to the community around him at large, and the Zimbabwean community in the diaspora and the Zimbabwean community back home. So I think it is important that we are trying to open up this case on the platform so that most of the people who are following, like me, who is not aware or who are not well acquainted with what is Mkoma Masimba is trying to do, can get that information from this platform. As this, there's nothing bad in engaging in his platform, because actually we are talking about his efforts and what the things which he is currently doing.
Then Fonny McGinley says 2 topics. I guess she's saying there's one topic, which is Zimbabwe, and there's another topic, which is the book. And where is the intersection? The intersection is what is fact, what is fiction. Is the Zimbabwe economy sick? If so, who should have a better say in determining the sickness, if it exists? So is Mkoma Masimba sick? There are people who have already determined that he's sick. And we are now juxtaposing this with the situation in Zimbabwe, where there is a conflict of opinion. There are people who say Zimbabwe is sick, it's self-evident. There are people who are also saying Mkoma Masimba is sick and it's self-evident. While he may write about his own book, we also must write about our own book. Those who know Zimbabwe or pretend to know it, they can also add their voice. Do you talk about the book before it's finished? We will get to Abby. And do you want to comment on Vonnie so that we finish one subject and go to the next one?
No, I think we can.
Here we're talking about sickness.
To the next topic. I think you have said it all, and it's clear that yeah.
And volume, I'm not sure which volume Patrick is referring to, but I guess it's either between my voice and Elvis's voice. Then launching a book and writing a book are 2 different things. You have a point, Abby, and obviously Mkoma Masimba is saying he is launching a book, and I'm not sure what launch it is, or is the beginning of writing of the book, or it's an announcement of the intention to write a book, or it's a launch of a book that exists. I've not seen one. So on that, I cannot comment. All I can comment is that we need to explore this issue of what fact is not, and what fiction is and what fiction is not. Do you talk about the book before it's finished? One would like to think that you only talk about something that is finished. You talk about millimil. Once you put it with hot water, it becomes something else. It's no longer millimil. So you can talk about sadza after it's cooked. You can't talk about sadza in the millimil form because you may not have the heat. You may not have the millimil. So talk about something when it's done. That's what would seem to be the case. But in this case, we can now go to the subject matter of today. Gono says there is a crisis in Zimbabwe. And Gono makes this statement based on his history as a former governor of the central bank, and he calls himself an economist. He was also in the banking industry. Prior to that, he was at CBZ, Zimbabwe Development Bank. Do you agree with Gono on his assessment that the Zimbabwe economy is in crisis, contrary to what his president is saying and what other people are saying who are in government and some who are outside government? From your own assessment, do you believe that the economy of Zimbabwe is sick? And that's the question I posed to Mr. Elvis Mugari. What is your take on that?
It is crystal clear that the economy of Zimbabwe is sick, and I would want to vehemently concur with Gideon Gono that there's a crisis in Zimbabwe. The economy of Zimbabwe is sick, and we not only being sick, but the economy of Zimbabwe is in the intensive care unit.
All right. And Abi Mandishona begs to differ. He says, I don't agree. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Maybe, Abi, you can give us what you are talking about. Is it sick to you? And if it is, why do you say so? If it's not, why do you say so? So let's go ahead with the conversation. Gono talks of statutory. Okay.
Now, she's asking, you don't know what we are talking about, or you don't know Gono, what Gono is talking about, but we need to say, and what are the key fundamental or key macroeconomic fundamentals which can stabilize the economy? Are those things existing today in the economy of Zimbabwe? And why are we saying the economy of Zimbabwe is in the intensive care unit? And there are some things we need to put into consideration. Those are the macroeconomic fundamentals.
Maybe instance, before we say we, because just take notice that Abi doesn't agree with you. So you can give your...
I think, let me use, I think the key macroeconomic fundamentals we need to put into consideration, number one is inflation. What is the rate of inflation today? The country, we don't need reports from the RBZ. We don't need reports from the World Bank. We don't need reports from the IMF to measure the level of inflation in Zimbabwe. The country has recorded 3 digits inflation this August, and you can only even witness yourself. You can go to a supermarket and check what was the price of millimil, 10 kg of millimil the day before yesterday or last week, and then what is the price today. It shows you that the things are changing and the price are increasing, and so there's inflation. So this is one fundamental macroeconomic fundamental issue we need to say, is the country in a crisis? We have recorded 3-digit inflation. It shows that the country is sick. Also, if you go, recent statistics say more than 92% of the active population in Zimbabwe, they are not employed. They are unemployed. And also the evidence and the rising of the informal economy, it tells you that the country is sick. There is nothing. Everyone now is in the informal economy, in the informal sector. It shows also that the country is sick. We need to take a look on the balance of payment, balance of trade. The balance of trade is recording negative. It shows you that the country we are not exporting anything. We are importing even toothpicks from South Africa and others. It shows that the economy is sick. So these are the things we need to put into consideration in determining whether there is crisis in Zimbabwe economical, before touching about human rights issues, before touching about the breakdown of the social contract. This is the relationship between the government and those who are being governed. There's no such relationship. All these things entails and give you the direction that there is a crisis in the country. The people are dying of hunger. In our hospitals are dysfunctional. The health sector is in the state of comatose. The health sector is dead. Is in the intensive care unit itself. It shows you that we are in a crisis. Also, the people are finding it very difficult to put a single meal on their table, a decent meal on their table. More than 75% of the Zimbabweans are surviving on less than 50 cents a day. So this is a crisis, and we are in the crisis. So I vehemently agree with Gono. There is a crisis in the country, and there is a crisis which is emanating from a legitimate crisis, which is the bedrock of all these things we are facing today.
But in the art of debate, where you have a battle of ideas, wouldn't you start by defining what a crisis is and is not? Because the mere fact that there is hyperinflation does not necessarily mean there is a crisis. The indicators, before we get to the indicators, shouldn't we step back and just try to define what a crisis is? And according to Abby, acknowledge that there is a mess. ED is cleaning the mess Gono created. Has he cleaned it, or is he cleaning it, or is Zimbabwe moving towards the right direction? Abby doesn't say, but it's clear that he's got an opinion on Gono's tenure as governor. And that's what seems to motivate his comments. Then where say are not Zimbabwe is not in a crisis, needs to go to in psychiatric unit like Mkoma Masimba. That for you, according to Mary, there is no tolerance on those who disagree with you that Zimbabwe is in a crisis. So there's only one plausible next step. If you say there is no crisis, then you must be sick and you must be condemned to a psychiatry unit. I saw those who say there is no crisis in Zimbabwe, Vanopenga, instead of saying we disagree on this issue, but the disagreement does not necessarily mean one is sick or one is not, so that we can have civility in debates. Let those who believe there is a crisis define a crisis as they know it, then try to then take those properties of a crisis and relate them to the reality of Zimbabwe. As you may know it, it may not be the universe of what Zimbabwe is or the reality in Zimbabwe is.
The crisis can be defined with indicators, and so that we can understand what are the indicators.
But let's agree on what the crisis is, what sickness is. Then we can look at the symptoms, look at the indicators. If someone were to ask you, what constitutes a crisis, what would you say? Apart from the indicators, just a generic question of what a crisis is. what a crisis is not. So that's sometimes, rarely do we go deeper on issues so that we can arrive at the foundation of a dispute. That's very true indeed, Budi. Nongo is talking about Elvis. ED cleaning, somebody differs. Gordon differs with Abby. Good morning, Cynthia. How are you? There is no crisis in this country. Then that's Chafa. Crisis was caused by corruption. Matsotse. What is the crisis? Because corruption is part of human civilization. When does corruption constitute a crisis? And what is a crisis, Mary? Let's get your ideas on the foundation of this dispute, rather than for us to conclude.
Okay. I think I lost. I think my connection was acting up, but crisis can be defined as a time of intense difficulties or danger. If we are having difficulties, or if you are in a state of danger, we can say we are in a crisis because we are struggling to make something work. We are we are in time of intense difficulties.
Is there a shared understanding of what a crisis is and what a crisis is not?
And it's according to you. What do you know? And what is the crisis? What is a crisis to you? To me, a crisis is a time of intense difficulties and danger.
But that is known to you. But it may not be known to another. Do you agree that?
Yes.
What may be a crisis to you need not be a crisis to another.
I know, and I do agree.
So, according to President Mnangagwa, who moves in air-conditioned environments, who has never missed a meal because of any change in the ecosystem, is there a crisis known to him? Do you think in his mind he has come face to face with a crisis? He has been in government since 1980. What do you think is his reality compared to yours?
No, I think his reality. His reality is that there's no crisis in the country. What he calls crisis, what I call crisis, and what he calls crisis is totally different. What he admitted in the communique between the ANC government and the ZANU-PF government was, he said we have challenges. So maybe what I'm calling a crisis to him, there are challenges. And he said, just as other countries in Africa and around the world, we are having challenges and we are not immune to those challenges which are affecting us. So to him, there's no crisis in the country. To him, there's no crisis in the country. The only crisis is in the mind. According to him, crisis is the mind of those, his adversaries, those who are fighting him. That is, those are the ones who are seeing imaginary crisis in Zimbabwe.
When does a challenge become a crisis if the two are related?
The two are not related. The two are not related. The challenge and the crisis, those are two different things.
Isn't the baby of a crisis a challenge?
And from what the baby, and you rightly said, isn't the baby of a crisis is a challenge, and it is a baby. Your son, your child is not you.
You are saying uncontrollable. So a challenge is under control.
Yes, a challenge is under control.
A crisis is uncontrollable according to your own definition.
Yes.
So you agree with him that we are not there yet.
No, but now we can touch on the indicators. Now, I would not agree with him that we are not there yet, because the indicators we have now on the ground clearly shows that it is a challenge which is now out of hand, hence it's now a crisis.
No, but that's your conclusion. I'm saying is in the spirit of debate and dialogue, negotiation, would you not agree that what you call a crisis may not be a crisis to another, even though the indicators may say this or that?
That I agree, because we are different people with different opinions.
Yeah. So that's what he's saying. We are not at the time, we are not there to be defined as in a crisis mode, because there are people who want to drag Zimbabwe to that destination. And those people are evil people, are unpatriotic people, ungrateful people, and they were liberated by the war vets, and they must look up to those who created the country we know. They will tell you when a crisis arrives or not. But if you are not one of them, then you are offside, because the president has not declared a crisis. So who are you to talk of a crisis when your president, your general, your frontman has not declared so? So
but how can you expect
to divide the people of Zimbabwe and then create these divisions so that you can achieve the aim of regime change? So does the president not have a point as a gallant fighter for the liberation struggle?
The question is, how do you expect a mosquito to announce an outbreak of malaria? It's impossible. President will not realize or admit that he has failed.
Okay, who are you calling the mosquito?
To admit
no,
that...
I'm saying that's your allegation.
Yes, because to admit that there's a crisis in Zimbabwe, to admit that there's a crisis in Zimbabwe is an admission of failure, of which you will never expect that from him, because you will never admit that you have failed. The moment he says there's a crisis, agree that there's a crisis in Zimbabwe because of these indicators, because of these problems we are facing. It is indeed a crisis. It's an admission of failure, of which he will never do that. He will not admit that he has failed. No. He will try by all means to say, we don't have these things, don't have this challenge.
No, let's say you have a debate with President Mnangagwa.
Yes.
Let's say I blame President Mnangagwa. Yeah, so start the conversation.
In connection with the crisis in the country.
Good morning. Let me start it. Your Excellency, good morning. How are you this morning? I guess you've heard what the former governor says. He says, and I said boldly, that Zimbabwe is in a crisis. And as such, Zimbabwe needs a new leaf of life. There has to be a turnaround, because Zimbabwe is really on like this. Then I hear you. Gono is mistaken. He doesn't know what we're doing. He has been out of the government. And secondly, he underestimates the role of sanctions in undermining our sovereignty. Gono is naive. He doesn't know our detractors have influence, including in South Africa, where some of them are hiding and brewing a revolution that will never happen because we defend the motherland. They want to influence the African National Congress, whose president is my good friend, President Ramaphosa, to turn against us, to offend the ethos of the liberation struggle. And that's where the problem, Gono is getting carried away by these detractors to think that we are on course. He has not been following the mega projects that we have been launching since the ushering in of the Second Republic. And the only crisis comes from the detractors who are being paid by our former that we have done to restore dignity and property to the people of Zimbabwe who were denied access to their prime land by these colonizers of this country. And there is no crisis yet, but that's what our detractors want. And so those are the two voices, if you look at the president and Gono. So where do we go, Mr. Mugari, when there is so much dispute as to what a crisis is and what it's not? How do we bring you and President Mnangagwa into one room and debate the idea of a crisis and the properties of a crisis? Just talk about the foundation, the idea called crisis, and what triggers something from being a challenge or a problem into a crisis. Do you think we can do this without President Mnangagwa being here?
It is self-evident. It is self-evident that I would want to agree with Gono that no, Your Excellency, it is self-evident. We have these issues we have on the ground, these challenges we are facing. And these challenges are facing, they are pointing at the governance issues. It shows that there is issues around the way we are governing this country. There's issues around the way this country is being administered by your government, by your regime, by your administration. And these challenges, then I'll point out the challenges we are facing as a country. And these challenges are beyond measure. Because up to date, President, if we try to say what are the critical indicators, that entails that there is misgovernance, there is lack of proper administration from your administration of the country by your regime, by your system, Mr. President. Because remember, as a country, we are having the issues of constitutionalism, the issues of rule of law, the issues of the separation of powers, the issues of the constitution itself. In the year 2013, the people of Zimbabwe came out with a clear and a candid document, which is the law of the land. The constitution we are using today, 94.4% of the Zimbabweans voted yes on the referendum and agreed to come up with that document, which is the constitution. And you cannot imagine that up to today, Mr. President, do you know that we have more than 400 statutes which are inconsistent with the constitution, which needs to be aligned? Mr. President, do you know that there are some laws, draconian laws, which are existing in the country, which are taking the country back to the 1960s days? A law like for instance, President, I'll give you an existence. I'll give you as an example the existence of the law like a Reconstruction Act, the law which divests citizens of their rights the law which violates property rights. The existence of that law critically tells us that there is a crisis in the country. Also, we have some other draconian laws which are there, which needs to be repealed, so that we have a clear democratic space, so that we have a clear environment which will be conducive for business and investment. There's not a sane investor present which can come into your country to invest, which can come into your country to do business, when the law like the Recon Act and the Companies Open Act is existing in your country, in the statute book of your country. It is very difficult. It points out that we have a crisis. Today, there is no freedom of expression. There might be a freedom of speech, but there is no freedom of that speech. Where are we heading? It shows that there is a crisis in the country. So also, we need to evaluate what is happening in the country today, Mr. President. Everyone is an enemy. It seems like everyone is an enemy to your administration, Mr. President. If there are the students today, they are being arrested. The trade unions are the enemies. Other groups, or even the academics in your country, Mr. President, they are the problems to your administration. So who is your friend, Mr. President? So who is helping you to run this country, Mr. President? Everyone is the enemy. Everyone's being arrested. The moment we come out and say, we need, these things need to be addressed. We need the laws like the Recon Act to be repealed. We are being arrested. We are being threatened to say, you need to be silent. So, President, how can we build a democratic space? How can we build a democratic institution in your country when there is no such room? When there is no such room for dissenting voice to be tolerated. So all these things, President, it entails crisis. President, we know that the army belongs to the barracks, but today the army are in the streets. What are the army doing in the streets? It shows that there's a crisis in Zimbabwe. What are the army? Who has the mandate to deploy the army in the streets? According to our constitution, it's you, the president. So this shows also that there is a crisis, Mr. President. What are the army doing in government? Today we see that in most ministries, and most of the people who are in the permanent secretaries of all those ministries, they are the colonels from the army. They were saving 1.7 from the army. It shows that we are in a military government. And if we are in a military government, we are also mean that this is a constitutional crisis, and we are in a crisis. So what are the police doing in our roads on daily basis? Beating people unwantonly. Unwanton arrest of those people who are opposing him. It means that there is a crisis. What are all these people who are brutally being assaulting other people, and there's no people are being abducted on daily basis, and there's no any investigation which is happening, no meaningful investigation which we are witnessing as the people of Zimbabwe. It shows that there's a crisis. So, Mr. President, there's a crisis in your country, and this crisis needs to be put. However, the crisis, Mr. President, is emanating, or all these challenges are now beyond measure, are emanating from a legitimate crisis, Mr. President. We come from a tightly contested election in 2008, and hence it was a tightly contested election in 2008. And we need to put a full stop on that one, because there is a power contradiction. There's a contradiction of power. One is pulling the other side, the other one is pulling the other side. So, Mr. President, for us to address these issues, number one, we need, Mr. President, to admit that we have serious challenges which are beyond measure in our country. Because the first step towards reconciliation, the first step towards restitution, the first step towards restoration is to admit that we are in a crisis, is to admit that we have a problem. So we need to put a full stop to the legitimate question, which is the motherboard of the challenges we are having today, Mr. President. So what we need, Mr. President, for us to solve, I see Tambira is asking, so what is your solution? The solution, Mr. President, is we need an inclusive template, Mr. President, to put an end to what is happening in this Zimbabwe. An inclusive template. There is a need of a dialogue, a clear and a conducive and a candid dialogue, Mr. President, in the country. And this dialogue must be an inclusive dialogue. And this dialogue, Mr. President, must be rooted from reforms agenda, which is economic and political reform. So the dialogue must not be centered on power issues. though we have a legitimate crisis, but let's come together and have a discussion. And this discussion must help us to say what we are discussing must be centered on a reform agenda, which is economic and political reforms. Number one, we have the constitution. We need the full implementation of the 2013 election, Mr. President, 2013 constitution. We need the full implementation. Number two, Mr. President, I mentioned to say we have more than 400 laws which are inconsistent with the constitution, which is vying on closing the democratic space in Zimbabwe. We need alignment of these laws, Mr. President. Number three, Mr. President, we need to see a clear and a democratic space, because currently the democratic space is being shrunk. So we want to see some of the draconian laws, for instance, the law which I have mentioned, a Reconstruction Act. We want to see these laws being repealed, Mr. President, because these are laws which are closing and which are threatening investors to come to invest in the country. As long as we are a sovereign country, as long as we are a country, an independent country, we are not in an island. We need FDI. We need foreign direct investment. But those people cannot come to invest in a country where there is a law which divests people of their rights, of their property rights. So we need to repeal these laws, Mr. President. So these are the things, Mr. President, we need to address. But we can only address this collectively, where all the people, all the political stakeholders who are involved, all the political stakeholders are on the table. Who are these political stakeholders? We need the same military to be involved on this discussion. We need oppositions, all opposition sectors to be involved. We need the students to be involved. We need trade unions to be involved. We need even the war vets to be involved. Everyone must be involved and must come on the table, and then let's discuss. But our discussion must be rooted from these two critical issues of governance, which is economic and political reform. Then we go to an election, Mr. President, with a conducive environment for business, the conducive environment for election. In other words, what I'm advocating for is we need to come up with a national transition authority that will run the country basing on these two key fundamentals, economic and political reform, so that we address these issues. And after addressing these issues, we can go.
I think Elvis is back, and we need to be able to understand what dialogue is,
so the people of Zimbabwe
and what dialogue is not. And so far, I've been trying to follow in precise terms what Elvis is saying. And he has said a lot. And he has introduced a lot of factors. Some of them fall beyond a president. Some of them fall within the president's capacity to solve. So I am playing the devil's advocate. And now I am the president. Thank you, Mr. Mugari, for your brief but pointers to issues that confront all of us. I was elected, and duly elected so, to be the president of the Republic of Zimbabwe. Notwithstanding, I've taken it upon myself to reach out to people who genuinely believe in the Zimbabwean promise. Who were also my competitors.
Don't let me interject you. Allow me, Mr. President, to interject. That you said you were elected unanimously by the people of Zimbabwe. But remember, Mr. President, there was a dispute, and the big dispute was taken to the Constitutional Court. And the Constitutional Court.
I didn't say unanimously. I said I was elected president. And notwithstanding, there was a dispute that found its way to the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court ruled that ZEC had done its job in accordance with the rules. And I was then declared by the court, and prior to that by ZEC, as a duly elected president. And while we may have differed, while we may have been competitors, since taking the oath of office, I would have expected people like you who have ideas on how we should move forward to come into the tent so that together we can identify the problems and solutions. Talk is cheap. Even if we were to dialogue, the dialogue will not remove sanctions. We are still under the spotlight for taking back the land from the people who came from Europe. And they came here to take our land, and our policy of dispossessing is reduce the volume on your device. I don't know whether it's my device or anybody else. Can you hear me correctly, Mr. Mugari?
I can hear you very well. Can you?
Mr. Mugari, can you hear me? Sound too harsh or too audible? Is there a problem of sound or volume?
No, there's no problem. I can hear you clearly.
All right. So I'm the president of the people of Zimbabwe, and I've taken note of those who don't like me. They are raising issues that I'm not legitimate. So if I'm not legitimate, what would be the basis for me to talk to people who don't recognize me? So if you don't recognize me, then obviously you have elected to be outside the four corners of constitutionalism. I believe in the voice of God coming through the people of Zimbabwe. So as far as I'm concerned, I find no basis for you to construct a crisis, then propose that I solve a self-created crisis. We have to restore the legitimacy of the government of Zimbabwe. We removed the former president because that's what the people wished. And we are in the second dispensation so that we can work together. You talk of a national transitional authority. Transition from what to what? And who would give that animal called the people of Zimbabwe who voted in 2018 to make ZANU-PF their vehicle, to advance their interest, and make me the president, the head of state, commander-in-chief, so that I can give the safety promise that is in the Constitution. So when you talk of crisis, be specific. What is a crisis to you? You seem to be hopping from one problem to another without even acknowledging that those problems are self-created. And if they're self-created, the people who created the crisis are the very people who must solve it. It can't be me because I'm a product of the voice of the people, which is the voice of God. I was fired and I was restored into the government because the people of Zimbabwe knew that I had experience and I have loyalty. I'm a patriot par excellence, that they can trust me to protect the seed and the harvest of independence. Now you are telling me what is tantamount to treason, that I must give up. I must abdicate to a national transitional authority without any reference to constitutionalism. How dare you challenge the people of Zimbabwe who spoke and have spoken? So can we deal with this issue in a comprehensive manner so that we can be able to get to the bottom of this so-called crisis, which is being brewed in people's heads? Some say hashtag Zimbabwean lives matter, yet they don't think that I matter. And I am the president of the opposition, of the people, of the members of ZANU-PF. And I am a servant leader. I'm so loyal to the Republic, having worked for 40 years. Each day of independence, I've been on the table of what matters. We have come this far not to be detracted by our enemies who come clothed as patriots, as opposition, and all they are saying is tantamount to negating the ethos of independence. So, Angelina, thank you. I hear you. So, we don't hear each other. You see a glass as half empty, and I see it as half full. That my administration, under difficult conditions, has tried its hardest to inch Zimbabwe towards the promised land. The first question is, does the majority of the people you lead believe in you and what you intend to do? Yes, there is no one in parliament. We control the parliament. We control the army. I control the executive. I appoint the judges. None of these people who work for government have resigned en masse, saying there's a crisis. So where is this self-created majority? If the majority no longer want me, I'll be the first one to step down. You can say that, Ako. Those in power, one it as one order, without being reprimanded. Who is going to reprimand me? When I am in charge, the people of Zimbabwe are docile. They voted for ZANU-PF since 1980. So who are you to substitute them? Where are the people who don't like me? Except those who have never liked ZANU-PF, those who are apologists for imperialists, for neo-colonialists, those who are puppets, who receive money from our enemies. Those are the people that we must flush out. Those who want to undermine the promise of independence by causing confusion. Those are the enemies you ought to focus on, not on the majority. Tell me one single MP, including the opposition, who has come up for not doing what I'm supposed to do in terms of the Constitution. I know what I have to do, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Can you imagine your former colleagues, turncoats, who go to South Africa and then cause havoc when they are criminals who have cases to answer? We are going to do the right thing, apply for their extradition so that we can test the allegations in our courts of law. But before they go to court, we decide when they should be out, so that we tell the other people that corruption is a bad vice, and those who practice it must not be given sanctuary in countries that enjoy good and fraternal relationship with our republic. So as your president, indiscipline is the biggest crisis. There are young people who pretend to know everything, and they're saying, I'm illegitimate. And they even went to law school to study law. Some of them are even practicing. Yet they don't know that the Constitutional Court is the apex court. Once it has determined the dispute, we must get on with it until we meet again in 2023. Look at the opposition. Is there order there? Is there constitutionalism? Or it's infantile disorder? Do you really think we fought against a regime that had no order, no respect for the human dignity, no respect for property rights, only to find ourselves with a confused lot who think what is between their ears is the universal reality that we should follow? One day they say they've spoken to Trump. The other day they say, Zimbabwe, we hold the key to Zimbabwe's salvation. If we don't unlock, Zimbabweans will suffer until the regime change is effected by hook or crook. So there is my case. I'm the protector of the Bill of Rights. And you talk of laws that are unconstitutional, but we have been in court where other people, like stupid Mawere, challenged us 25 times. And guess what, Mr. Mugabe? We won 21 out of 25 times. So who am I to say the laws are bad? There is nobody who is crying out and saying the Reconstruction Act is a bad law, except you who appear on foolish Mawere Facebook Live. We don't depend on social media. We are on the ground, and we know what is good for our people. And who the hell do you think you are to tell us that our laws are bad laws when our institutions, the laws that apply to everybody? Hang on, the Reconstruction Act, we have used it, not only in respect of SMM, but in respect of Air Zimbabwe, in respect of Wange Colliery, in respect of Sabi Gold Mine, and we have won cases. The court has never said that they are offended by the existence and operation of such a law. Then you come on social media and say there's a crisis. Where is that crisis? Take me there, and I want to see who is there, because I believe that I have been a lawful and a law-abiding president of all the people of Zimbabwe. That's why there's peace and tranquility in Zimbabwe. So please don't disturb our peace. and we shall meet in 2023. Those who win, and we are confident that from the by-election that we will win. Our mandate is to serve the people of Zimbabwe. And so far, there is no competitor. ZANU-PF Constitutional Court, and you want us not to talk about it, we will forever speak about it. C2C was rigged, period. That's your version, Shepherd. The court belongs to all of us. It is ruled against us. In other cases, it is ruled in favor of us. And how dare you call the Constitutional Court of the Republic of Zimbabwe a biased court, a partial court, a dependent court? A loser always believes that the exam is unfair because he didn't prepare for it. Bye, Masimba Momuda Kani Wamawere. No, I don't. It's not about Masimba. It's about fake and fiction, Tamuka. The sanctions. Per your words, bank experience. Yes, they have targeted us because we are leading the people to salvation. Look at the new dispensation. We have surplus. We are inching towards there. This is your president talking. It belongs to ZANU-PF, not us. That's what you may think, Shepherd. It's the Republic of Zimbabwe. And you voted for me to be your. We are a sovereign nation. And I will be the last man defending the sovereignty of Zimbabwe. This is not Masimba talking. This is somebody pretending to be the president of Zimbabwe. And this is what you may expect to hear from president. Let's hear it so that we understand what he's talking about, so that those who differ may differ with the knowledge of what the other side is saying, has been saying, and is likely to say, so that those who seek change can do so with the clarity of mind and the precision of actions that lead somewhere. So on that score, if something else, and just a quiz, do you think I have captured President Mnangagwa's views on what you think matters? If you think I have, say yes. If you think I have not captured somebody who can be able to represent the two views that are at stake, one saying there is a crisis, another saying there is no crisis. President Mnangagwa is saying there is no crisis. And he's got reasons for that. And those who say there is a crisis have a duty to unplug the true nature of the crisis in a manner that is understood by those you may not agree with. The moment we become emotional, we lose the plot. The moment I don't represent the views of my enemy, there is no middle ground. So if it's my enemy, I have to be able to understand his state of mind. Joe says yes, he believes that I've captured some of the views in a manner in which they are articulated by the authors of those views. And what is a crisis? And Mawere is using Masimba Nakambo Staura. Why would I need to use Masimba when he is the one who is using to give you content that ordinarily you would not hear? He is writing a book about fact versus fiction. And you are not listening to Atenda Mucha. The issue of Zimbabwe is at the very center of. And there are others who say Zimbabwe is sick. Who is to be believed? There are some who say Masimba ran away from the hospital. There are others who say he was discharged properly and he is not sick. I got my own platform, but my platform is used by others because I don't own a platform. The platform is there to be used so that those who want to hear different views can hear. You don't go to Zimbabwe to see the president. You don't go to a Facebook platform and say it belongs to me. What does ownership of a platform mean? If I have 24 hours, surely do you expect me to be there for 24 hours? Or to have 24/7 where Tatenda can come as well? You don't have viewers. You want Masimba? I don't need viewers because you are the viewer that must decide whether you want to hear or not. If Masimba is asleep right now, what do you want him to do? To be half asleep and half attending to you? We are saying let's create communities so that we exchange. We use the same country. The same country can have billionaires, can have millionaires, can have no millionaires, can have graduates and no graduates, yet still remain in the same country. If we can share a country, why can't we share platforms? What's happening? Is Mawere reduced himself to this kind of nonsense? I hope not. He used to be a respected business person. That's what Robson is saying. And Robson is correct that the people who are like flies, they never make meat. But I'm here to remind you that Zimbabwe's condition requires sober minds. And sober minds require that we listen to each other, that we have alternative things. But human rights question was sort of brushed aside. There are no human rights, if I was the president, issues. There are people who pretend to be something else. Some pretend to be journalists when they are in truth and fact agitators. They pretend to be sick when they are not sick. They pretend to be abducted when they have abducted themselves. In the Republic of Zimbabwe, we came in to usher a new era so that we can live in peace. There is no human rights issue in Zimbabwe. Anything you read about is created to foment confusion and dissent. Tai yamunoita bosi chikuru muripano for Masimba's large viewership. I hope you are one of the viewers who can switch off when I'm on Tatenda. You don't have to be a witness to voices that you don't want to hear. I would not get into someone's Facebook page who has not authorized it. I don't need that. But Masimba has decided to use the 1873. You see, they be used by other people. So I'm provoking you, Tatenda, to come on board. Give us the content that we are missing. so that we can do less and you can make sure that we celebrate different views because you choose to step forward, not to point fingers as if a country belongs to the president. No Facebook platform, no road, no highway belongs to the motorist. It belongs to multiple platforms so that together, diverse and hopefully prosperous, because the views expressed can provoke someone. Meme regret nezvavari kuita kumberi uko nokuti vana is very selfish. If he's selfish, why would he give up his own page to allow other people like Tatenda to become experts at Facebook and who it belongs to? Ask them. There are people who are experts at viewers and they think those are followers. They think those are not human beings who can decide to do other things. So thank you very much.